Here for our Lunch and Learn. Today, Teresa and I are going to be talking about social skills in the day of social distancing. It almost seems like an oxymoron.
Right.
We kind of, it's a big challenge for sure. So before we get started, we have some housekeeping as usual. And I always have a hard time advancing slides for some reason. Okay. So as you know, we always record our Lunch and Learn so that others can look at it in the future. And by participating, you're consenting to being recorded. But we will take care of getting rid of names and identifiers before we post it to our website. And if you have any questions, we have Carol with us today, and she's going to be our chat box navigator. So please enter those questions in the chat box and we will address them during our question and answer period. Alrighty. Go for it, Teresa.
Okay, well, welcome.
I love Sheldon.
I know, I love Sheldon too. You know, there's so many memes out now around COVID and different things. And so, of course, as I was looking through some things on social distancing, I found this one. And I don't know about the rest of you, but this is kind of how I'm feeling these days. Yesterday, and I actually see Gil on the call. I can see you. And so, hi, Gil. I was actually with her yesterday. So nice to see you. And we talked about some of these things. And it's interesting because we talked about how many masks we had on our bags and our purses and our hand sanitizers. And I kind of wasn't a germaphobe before, but now I kind of am, right? So when we're talking about social distancing, we're putting all these measures in place to try to assist us. And so I just thought this was really funny because maybe you're feeling this way too, right? As soon as we see someone or even pass them on the street, our social skills are definitely changing, right? Before we may have said a hello or a high five or a hug, now we are putting our shirt over our face and perhaps pulling on our hand sanitizer or our Lysol. So something to really talk about because that's changing the way we interact with one another. And we can really do that in a positive way. It doesn't have to be something that hinders us. So we want to talk about that. But it's just kind of a funny thing to perhaps maybe show how many of us are feeling, you know, during these times. So. You know, social skills, as we know, affects nearly every aspect of our life, and something really important for us to consider, especially during this time with those we work with and even ourselves, is how is that affecting school, right? That's the big hot topic, and we'll be talking about that. Even relationships of our individuals, whether that's boyfriends, girlfriends, family members, different groups and clubs together where we may have been an after school group or something after daycare. Now that may look different, and we can definitely still be involved and be social and learn those social skills. But what is that looking like virtually? Also home, right? Things are now we're with our family and other people, and what are our social skills looking like at home, and how are we developing those, and how are we helping our families understand, wow, this is a great opportunity for us to teach some of those skills at home and to translate and generalize those into real life, which families are so good at. Meeting people, again, you saw Sheldon with the Lysol. So again, that paradigm is kind of shifting. So instead of pulling our Lysol when we meet people, how can we still meet them where they're at in that social distancing aspect, but still having those, right, that hidden curriculum, what are the social rules? I still want to say hi. I still want to, maybe I want to social distance by, you know, waving or giving an elbow or something like that. Again, work, what does work look like? Many of us are, you know, working virtually. And so there's different etiquettes around that and teaching that to our students also, right? Some of our students are in school, but some of them are in the work world and preparing for the work world. So how do we assist them in knowing what that etiquette is in the virtual world? And just with friends, you know, I talked to an individual of a parent of a student with autism, and I said, you know, how is so-and-so doing? And she's like, well, you know, Teresa, he was made for this. he said he really, right? And I have to be honest with you, autism or not, I'm kind of made for it too. I'm very personal and I love being with people, but I've kind of enjoyed kind of being isolated a little bit. I don't know, maybe that's wrong to say. And if you're feeling that way too, that's, shout out to you, but we are still able to connect with friends, right? Like Stacy and I, we're colleagues, but we're also friends. And so we're finding those ways to connect, not only via Zoom, but texting. And what are so cool about our kids, especially our kids with ASD, they're really good at that, right? They're really good at connecting that way. And actually, I think that's a strength. And so we need to talk about that and how to promote that, and really learning from them how they're still communicating with others, and doing that well. So we'll talk about that. And then again, just sports teams, different things that we know are important to some folks in their lives, being in marching band, those kind of things. And maybe those aren't happening, but helping our school folks and our families understand that those things can still happen. Honestly, I think it's a great opportunity right now for us to really hit the road running. We're already working with schools and families who are using some really cool and creative ways to take all of these things and promote them virtually, and still promote social skills. I may not be with Stacy face to face, and I sure do miss her, and I miss Carol, and I miss the folks that I work with, but we're still connecting. And that's the important piece. And when we come to talking about social skills, it's really, what is that connection that we're helping make?
One of the things that I'd like to add is in talking with a lot of folks with autism, there's a lot of fear around COVID.
Yeah.
And that is something we need to be considerate about, because if we're trying to get folks to get out of their house, to meet people, even social distancing, there's a big fear of, what if I get it? And it's, I don't know if it's because of the news or because of whatever, but we really need to kind of tread lightly with that as well, and offer some support around that, and some truth around the likelihood of getting COVID, and how you can protect yourself but still be social in this time. And because I heard one young boy say, if I go to school, I could get COVID and die. I'm like, oh boy, whoa, let's back it up a little bit and talk about how we're going to be safe, and how you can still go to school and be with your peers, and how you aren't necessarily going to die from COVID. But we know there are those extremes, but we need to be really thoughtful about that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Stacy. Thank you.
Okay. What to teach? Because there's not enough to teach right now. Teachers are working so hard to just navigate. Before we started, we were talking with Carol about the different aspects of teaching. It used to be face-to-face, and that was it. Now it's face-to-face, it's hybrid, it's virtual, all in the same class even. And that is so daunting. But then we have to think about all these other social skills. And those are the things that we could kind of embed when we're all together. But now we have to think even more creatively about that. So Teresa, you want to start with this and I'll jump in?
Yeah,
Well,
no
I
problem.
try to.
So just teaching, we've had some great lunch and learn so far, just talking about, teaching those routines. And so again, just always remembering that the same things we do in person, we're going to do.
Sorry.
It's okay. We're going to do virtually as well, right? Again, just coming on before this call, right? So Stacy and Carol and I, right, we did our social routine. We greeted each other. We asked how everyone was doing. We made some small talk. Those kind of things, right, still happen and need to continue to happen. And how do we do that? And so again, just translating those skills into the virtual world and helping those folks. And again, you're going to use those same strategies we've always used, those visual supports, right? And that role playing. I mean, Stacy and I, we might turn off the camera after this and we can have a role play about having a conversation, different things, and greeting one another, and how to, like Stacy said, how do we greet one another in this time of COVID where we joke about the Lysol, but it's very true. And thanks, Stacy, for making that point. Our folks without ASD, right, are very worried about this, and our folks with ASD, due to many of their issues with anxiety and different things, this is weighing heavy on their mind, probably heavier than just returning to school or going into the virtual world. I think that's probably easier for them than, like you said, worrying about what's going to happen. So it's important just to talk about those new social routines and then continue to reinforce them, right? Because we just don't teach it once. We got to keep, every time we meet, we go over what that is. And then, of course, we reinforce them for doing the right thing, the appropriate behavior. So just really important to do that. And we're going to talk in a minute about all the different things like on Zoom and virtual routines that we teach. Communicating with peers and classmates. Again, when I talked to this parent and asked how this young man was doing, these guys are texting every day. I mean, I think it's, I think about myself and social skills. I'm of the generation, hey, you pick up the phone and you call somebody, right? But I'm working with folks who are younger than me who don't want to talk to me on the phone. They rather text or send an email, and that's fine. And I've had to adjust to that over the years and learning just different ways people communicate and really what works for them. And I think, our students with ASD are no different. I think sometimes we, I don't want to use the word force, but for lack of better words, Stacey, you can help me out. We force them to be with peers and interact and do these things. But, there's so many of us who, by nature, right, we know that there's a hidden curriculum, again, of social skills. I know when I'm on the job, I even though I'd like communicating with my peers and my boss, I have to do that. But I also, and that is going to make me successful and do well in my job. But and what are the benefits for me? But also, it's okay to not have to be social 24/7. And I think that's a reprieve we have to give our folks. I really do. I think we have to remember that. Me too. Like at the end of the day today, I'm going to go chill somewhere. I don't I don't always want to talk to someone or be social, and that's okay. But just remembering, hey, it is important to continue during this time to communicate with our peers and classmates at the distance. And again, how do we do that? Because our folks are really good at sending the memes and the texts and the online gaming, and especially in this generation of folks coming up, that is their world. So again, I think it's many of the virtual things are of benefit to our students. Sorry, that was a long drawn.
No, I think that's really a great point, Teresa. And I, as much as I don't like video games, and
Right.
that be because I have a teenage son who I think has controllers for hands, I think we need to allow folks that way of socializing.
Right.
And it's very challenging because it can impact and take away from all the other learning. But I think we need to give our teachers and our families a little bit of grace around that and saying, you know what, you can do some video games, but how about you do it with a neighbor and you can chat with them virtually or play a game, through Facebook or whatever, so that there's some education around it too.
And what in my experience working with individuals with autism, I think what I've learned from them is this really this helps give kind of a protection, right? It starts to get me out in the world and communicate with people, but I still am able to control it maybe on some of my terms in the virtual world. And I think that's sometimes what can be helpful, and then we need to maybe look at it as a strength.
The first point up here is how to be appropriate in a virtual learning environment. And I think that's really important. And I think one of the things that we can do as teachers is kind of have that routine and expectations set from day one. And so one of our strategies is Zoom etiquette. And I know that this is can be challenging because you want the video on, but some folks don't like to see themselves on screen. So because they're fidgeting or because they need to go to the bathroom or whatever, maybe having some expectations of when I'm calling on you, your video needs to be on or something around that. But there are some kids who really just don't want to see themselves on the screen. And I think we need to be respectful of that.
Yeah.
Being still, it is very distracting to see folks bouncing up and down and moving all around on a Zoom call or a Zoom meeting. But I think we need to be a little bit careful because moving around is going to be helpful, because if we're sitting in Zoom meetings and classes all day long with minimal opportunities for movement, being still might be challenging. So maybe there's a sensory box, and maybe the first week of school we're working on a sensory box for all students, whether they have autism or not, so that, you know, some of my friends click their pens. Well, maybe they can silently click their pen with their mute on, and that'll be fine for them, while others are playing with a fidget spinner, or maybe there's a TheraBand on their chair. They can keep their, you know, exercise that way to keep them moving so that they're able to focus. So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Stacey. Yeah, I was just gonna say that's a really important point, because I have a hard time sitting still. I'm actually concentrating on making myself sit still while I'm on these calls. But, you know, I got a different chair in here, right? That's a little more comfortable, that fits me a little better. And I think it's a prime time, Stacey, like you said, to use those sensory regulation skills, to work with the teachers, to work with the OTs, right? Virtually, on what students need. Hey, do they need that? Do we need to send the seat home that they sit on in school, that so they could also have that at home? I mean, again, you know, continuing to make those connections, providing the same supports at home that we're doing at school, whether it's hybrid or, you know, full on virtual. I remember kids need these supports wherever they're at. And that's a great point, Stacey. Thank you.
I like the Zoom etiquette thing, but
I
then I
did too.
realized, let's see, sitting still, that's going to be challenging.
Right. And I think, you know, Stacey, like you said, it really goes back to what we know as teachers and paraprofessionals and families. When I was talking about visual supports before, right, it's still the same supports. We're still using the same things, but we're providing it across all domains. And that is what is so important for us to remember, is that I know there's so much, you know, Carol and Stacey and I talked about the planning and all of the, you know, so much that teachers and families have on them right now. But, you know, take some comfort in knowing, hey, you know what to do. You've got the strategies. Just continue to use those across the domains so that we can help everyone be successful. So.
And really being consistent across environments, and helping families be consistent too, because the strategies that teachers know to use and that they are successful with in school, parents need to know that too.
Absolutely.
So that they can provide the best environment for their son or daughter.
Absolutely. Thanks, Stace.
All right. Connections.
So, you know, the big thing for me is I'm a connection person. And so, again, I think that, you know, what we know about evidence-based practices and social skills are encouraging, those connections with others. Remember, you know, individuals with autism theory of mind, it's not because they don't want to have friends. It's because perhaps they've not been taught how to have friends. And we just need to provide the extra motivation, right? And so the way we do that is, hey, what are your interests, right? Are you into online games? Well, hey, let's get some online games going, and let's get some peers in there. And I can tell you, the folks that I know who are in clubs and games, when you see them together with their peers, they're the chattiest. Yeah, they're probably talking about their own interests, but they're listening to the other people who are interested in what they are doing. And so that is a huge motivation for them. And so that's where I see our individuals really start to blossom. And so that's a way we start and we get our foot in the social skills door with the individuals we work with, by really finding out what their interests are. I just recently talked to well, Gil, you're on the call, so I'm going to use you as an example. Gil and I were in the training yesterday, and I just happened to see your face, so I appreciate you letting me use you on the spot. Gil, she was great. We did an activity called What's in Your Bag, and she's got cards in her bag, and she says, hey, you never know when you're going to have to teach someone a card game or a poker game. And you know what? She's exactly right, because I know an adult right now who wants to learn how to play poker. He's in a group home, and we said, well, gosh, that would be a great idea. And so so thanks, Gil, you're right on, because those are the skills later in life, right? Hey, let's play a game of cards. Hey, I'm home with my family. Maybe you're not playing poker, but maybe you're playing Go Fish. Maybe you're playing spades. Maybe you're playing some other game. But right, what we know about games in general is that's where we learn those really important social skills, turn taking and listening and conversations and just again, so that was
Losing gracefully.
right. Exactly. So exactly. And so again, just using those interests. So I thought that was great. So thanks, Gil. And again, people are coming up with some great ideas. Virtual social hour, right? Especially for adults, right? Who are in these homes or again, when we're working on job etiquette and what do we do? Okay, so let's get our adults together and let's talk about, okay, so, hey, I'm interviewing for a job, but I can't do it in person. So what are, I still have to look good from the top up, right? So I still have to put on maybe my shirt or my tie. I have to have my hair combed. I have to have those things. So let's have those virtual groups to talk about that and help folks. So, families can get together with other families and start to talk about those things. Teachers, gosh, we encourage you more than ever to use your creativity to have those opportunities, especially if you do like social skills groups, right? Or whatever you do in your teaching. Same with paraprofessionals. I mean, use this time to your advantage to really help spend some time with folks on what to do. Birthday parties. I mean, my birthday's in October. I'm totally going to have a birthday party. We have a colleague of ours retired. We had a virtual retirement party, and yeah, we didn't get to be there in person, but we still got to honor that person, and we still had a fun time. We still laughed. We still had all of those social, right, quotes, interactions that we may have had in person. We still laughed. We still had conversations. We took turns, right? We listened to one another. So, and just continuing too with families who may not be able to see other family members, not forgetting that connection, right? Whether it's a phone call or a video chat or a text, and encouraging our students to continue to reach out to family as well.
One of the neat things that I've been doing with some young adults with autism is having Hangouts, Zoom Hangouts. And on our Zoom Hangouts, we go somewhere. So we'll pick a zoo or a museum or something that everyone can kind of get their hands around, like history. And everyone seemed to like history, so we went to the Smithsonian and we did a virtual tour of the Smithsonian.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we could talk about the exhibits, we could talk about what dinosaur was everyone's favorite, but it was a way to get everyone to interact around something that they're interested in. No, we can't go to Smithsonian, but we could certainly virtually go there and talk about it. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and Stacey, that I just did a couple Sundays ago, I just did a virtual tour of the Holocaust Museum, and there was a group because I've always wanted to go, and I haven't been able to go, and I just happened to see something online somewhere, so it was free, right? There was people from all over the United States, right, who can't get there either, and it was just so cool to go through it and talk. They had some, folks who survived the Holocaust who were talking. It was just really great. It was such a great moment, and I just thought, for me, I think that's what has opened up for our folks. It's like you said, to have those opportunities, especially around their interests. That has been an interest of mine for a long time, and I'm so excited to be able to do that. So you make some really great points. It's just right. It's the connection. It's about getting the folks together and doing things to help them practice those social skills and want to be social, right? And motivate.
So
yeah.
We have a couple of questions
okay.
right around these couple of, and I didn't want to go too far without bringing them up.
All right.
Thank you, Carol.
The first one is that everyone is asking for a copy of the Zoom etiquette slide.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so I wonder if you could maybe post that separately when we post. For those of you who are attending, we archive all of these and we post them. And so Stacy and Teresa will send their PowerPoint, but they can also separate that particular slide out. A second question was about gaming and thoughts about online game groups like Warcraft or Minecraft. I know that my college-age daughter has been having game nights with her friends. There are many, many games online that
Yeah.
you can share. And one of the things that I can search for is a list of games. There are games that are for all ages, from Crazy Eights to Go Fish to
Right.
the Stratego, and the really complex kind of games that people play. So that's another way to create social environment. So I'll also share that.
One of the things that I would, a caveat around that is how to interact appropriately in the chats. Excuse me. So maybe a set of rules. So if someone says something inappropriate, you either say, hey, that's not fair, or that's not nice, or something. Or if you are losing or if you're unhappy, you don't share that online, because I
Right.
think a lot of bullying can happen, and a lot of pretty negative stuff around chats.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Thanks, Carol. And thanks for finding those, because I just think about, I talk a lot about my 3-year-old niece, but I think about her and just online, and like at 3, how savvy she is, right, with her tablet and online. And we play games, electronic games. Like I pulled out a board game last time I was home, and she's like, no, I'm not interested, right? She'd rather do something electronically. So thanks, Carol. Great point. It's really important. Yeah.
And it's a nice way to interact with family members,
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
interact with neighbors, and then you can really work on the different social skills and how to respond appropriately in all those little chats and stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So how do we do all this?
Well, like I was saying before, don't forget the skills you already know, right? So evidence-based strategies are evidence-based strategies. You're going to use them online, hybrid, in person, right? I'm still going to use modeling and video modeling, right? I'm still going to model what I want, whether I'm here online with Stacy or whether I'm in person, right? And video modeling is such a great way. We know that's an evidence-based practice in social skills for us to do things like, okay, how would you greet somebody, right? I could do a video model. I could have Stacy and Carol on the street with their mask, and I could show how if they're too close together, that's not how we social distance. And then, right, we could have a visual support of tape on the sidewalk and them standing 6 feet apart, showing 6 feet apart, and talking about that. And remember, many of our students with ASD are visual learners, and so the visual is so powerful, and especially in teaching social skills. So again, just don't forget your good practices and social skills. And again, really help families, right? What I love about families is a lot of our families already do this innately, and they don't even know what they're doing, right? Until we give a name, like, oh, hey, did you know when you're doing that for your son or daughter? That's modeling the behavior, and then you reinforce it by, a high five or, Snickers bar or whatever that may be, right? But it's just really important to continue to do that. So just, Stacey, do you have anything else on modeling or?
No, I'm going to move on to movies, because I think this can be
This one's a cool one. Yeah, go ahead.
I in graduate school 1,500 years ago took a social and moral development course. And one of the things we did was looked at Disney movies and analyzed them for social and moral components. And from then on, I'm like, oh my gosh, what an amazing tool. So you can watch whatever movies or videos they're interested, and have that remote ready to pause it and talk about it. It might make your son, daughter, student a little upset that you're pausing, but set up that expectation ahead of time. Like, hey, we're going to pause it. We're going to continue, but we need to pause and talk about these different things. Because what happens in the movies there's so much eye contact and looking at facial expressions and things like that, and we can really use those as wonderful teaching tools.
Yeah, Stacey, and there's so many situations, right? Like I think of I just think of some of the things I've been watching recently, and I think, gosh, that would be a great opportunity to teach a skill, even for myself, right? Like, oh, I really learned something from that. And so, like you said, just setting the expectation up, you know, I definitely would start with areas of interest, but definitely then moving, you know, whatever the skill is that you're teaching on, you know, watch a movie that has some of that in that. And like you said, stop, talk about that. What is this? What do you think? What do you think? And what's really important, right, is I think we have a slide on perspective taken in a moment, but what's great about this is understanding their perspective, right? Because remember, that's a really hard social skill for a lot of our folks. So this is a great opportunity to be able to find out, hey, what is their perspective? And then how do we teach what's really happening there so that they understand? Because that's where the social communication breakdown is, right? Especially in relationships, right? When we watch movies around relationships, I think that's especially with some of our young adults, right? And older adults, where we can really help them with that skill, is watching some of those movies and saying, okay, so do you think that was, what do you think about that? Was it appropriate when he, you know, said that or did that, or she said that or did that? Why or why not? And what do you think they should do instead? And let's talk about that. And that's that real time connection. So.
And real time can happen obviously anywhere. So
Right.
you sit down at a dinner table and someone says something inappropriately. Well, that's the time to discuss it,
Right.
because if you come back to it later, the recency is not there. So really taking the time to be like, okay, so you can't call your sister that at the dinner table or ever really.
Right.
And you know, this is how she feels, or
Yeah.
you can't reach across Dad to get the mashed potatoes because you're cutting off his view or whatever. So
Right.
really taking that time to pause and use all these teachable moments that happen all day long, no matter what. It can be tiring, absolutely, but this is kind of where we need to be, and thinking about in this interesting predicament we're in, how things might have changed, or how, you know, we're going out to Target and we're all wearing face masks and there's inevitably people who aren't, and that's not going to be fair, right? So why are they choosing not to? And use that as a teachable moment, and explain that perhaps they didn't get the memo that they're supposed to be wearing face masks that are posted on the door that you need it in public.
Right, absolutely.
An indoor building. Anyway, I digress.
Right. And like I said, Stacey, the natural settings are, you know, we talk about that when we talk to groups about teaching social skills, right? You have to have planned opportunities to teach, like we're talking about perhaps with those movies, some video modeling. But then you also need those natural settings, and a combination of both of those is really what helps our folks start to internalize and then generalize the skills that we're teaching them. So great point.
And I absolutely love discussion groups.
I do too.
And,
I love
and you know, kids can sign up for like different things that they want to talk about, and then they're become the expert of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we all have our special interests. I like to call them hobbies because I like to talk about them, think about them. And then I am the expert about that. So then that person can be, you know, like Teresa's really great at antiquing and music. So I am not, but I can ask her all these questions. And that's a way of working on turn taking and
Right.
asking appropriate questions and having her respond appropriately to me. And then maybe she wants to know about soccer or about
Kayaking.
all I have right now that I can talk about.
Kayaking. You do all kinds of
Oh yeah, sports. And so she can talk to me about that, and I'm the expert.
Absolutely.
And that's a neat way for a whole class to engage socially and appropriately.
Yeah. And just a quick point too on what you stated earlier about, you know, kind of the fear around COVID. I think it's just important to name it and talk about it, and to have truth about it. And I think perhaps maybe that's what Carol had said to us too before we came on, but it just really is important for all kids, right? And like you said, but having a discussion group around that and actually spending some time around that really helps with that social emotional piece that we really have to take care of right from the start. So
And it will help with the anxiety, and
yeah.
you know, having the facts and stating what the facts are and why we're doing the things we're doing can alleviate a lot of that stress and anxiety.
And as you go on to the next slide, Stacey, just for those of you who don't know, we have many resources on our website around those. So we've been pumping out videos around wearing masks, going back to school, being at home. So we'll definitely post that link as well. But we do have a link on our ACE website just around COVID resources. So please use those resources. They're short videos, probably not one is even more than 10 minutes long, but they're so important with such great information that we can share with families and our students on these things that we're talking about.
So perspective taking, we were talking about this and how we can use comedy and how we can use videos and games and really helping folks kind of figure out what their perspective is and what other people might have, that whole theory of mind thing. One thing that we have to consider though is now we have masks, right?
Right.
And this is a great opportunity to teach kids to look at eyes, which can be scary or uncomfortable, but it's a way to kind of have people understand that a lot of facial expressions can be in the eyes. And we know that folks with autism generally look at mouths and not at eyes, but it's a way to kind of, you have a mask on, so the eyes are what you see. And looking, playing games online even, where everyone's wearing a mask. I did this pretty recently, and my eyes can be very telling, but it was interesting that without the rest of my face, kids were having a hard time understanding what I felt, if I was bored or angry or sad, and telling them why my eyes look a certain way and having them kind of model it back and take turns on everyone pick an emotion and what are you, and it's almost like charades to really help people look at each other and their eyes and understanding more body language too. So, you know, if I'm looking up, well, maybe I'm bored, or if I'm doing other things while I'm on a Zoom meeting, then I'm distracted. So using the mask to our advantage here to help kids look more at the upper part of a face.
Yeah, I totally agree, Stacey. Thank you.
Relationships. Yep. So this is hard, right?
It is hard, and this is Stacey's area, but I'll tell you something interesting I heard before, because she's really the expert on this, but so this makes a lot of sense, right? So we've had online dating for a long time, right? And, you know, I'll disclose, I've done online dating, right? And the thing is, the person who said this to me recently was like, Teresa, you know, we've had this kind of virtual dating relationship for a long time. So, and that's really, really true. You know, I had my folks once say to me when I was dating a person I had met online, well, how do you know that? How do you really know that person? How do you, but again, you know, then I did meet that person face to face, right? And you have to have, you know, that component, but, you know, connections are just about connections, right? And so that I think, again, I use myself a lot in example, and you are kind of what you teach, right? But I really do think that for some of us and our individuals with autism, again, it's a safeguard. It's a safe place for me to be able to talk to someone. I don't have to disclose all of my, what others think are my social ineptness. You know, I can do, I can be myself. I can talk. I can have these conversations. I can disclose some of my interests. I can talk about some of my hobbies, and it's a kind of a safe place. So, you know, just something to think about. I'm not, you know, like promoting online dating. I'm just saying that, you know, we've had things like that around for a while, and we've had, even if it's not a relationship in the sense of a love relationship, you know, again, just those relationships with peers, right? Connecting with one another. Again, our folks may not want to talk on the phone, but hey, can I have a Zoom and not show my face or have a cool background? Carol's got some cool virtual backgrounds. And that's one of the things we talk about in distance learning is, hey, how can I provide a safeguard, right? Something that feels me so safe and secure, but still shows you who I am, right? That's part of the social communication piece. But anyway, I digress. Stacey, go ahead, because this is your bag.
Well, you know, you can send out questions that people can ask each other virtually. So you can have a list of, if I'm interested in getting to know a person, here's a list of questions that I might have. If I'm interested in that person already and want to know more about them, here's a list of questions I can share, so that they have those visual supports and those tools.
Right.
I don't have to, you know, if I'm on my text and I have my list of questions, I can just send the question, and nobody needs to know that I had prompts or anything like that. And it's a way of having some more comfort and more appropriateness.
Absolutely.
To of either a friendship or a relationship, and really knowing how you feel about the responses you get back and how to take it to the next level. But we could do a whole lunch and learn about relationships.
Well, absolutely. And like you said, Stacey, the etiquette around that online scenario, like you were just talking about as well. But again, it's another opportunity, right, for a safe place for us, especially working with individuals, to have, like you just said, to have that opportunity to engage in that and then discuss it afterwards, right? And then prepare them for the next time that they engage in that scenario. So absolutely.
And you can almost be like a social coach. So you give all the questions out to your class or your son or daughter, and they engage in this social experience, and then meet with them either one-on-one or small group to say, so how do you think it went? Did the person give you a thumbs up and you can certainly do, like, you know, rate the person. Yeah, I'd like to talk to them more. Or no, that we didn't really have any interest together.
Right.
And that's perfectly fine, because you have to understand that disappointment does happen, and how do you deal with that too? So it doesn't mean that everyone is going to want to be your friend. And how do you say, okay, well, I'll meet someone else different next time. And those skills around those sorts of relationship fumbles and stuff too.
Yeah, that's an important point. Thanks, Stace.
So back to the whole distance experiences, it's important to know the different expectations. So what are the expectations? And I really don't know why there's all these yellow lines on these slides, to be honest. Sorry. Maybe I drew them there. I don't know. So if I'm in a Zoom meeting with a professor or with a teacher, what are the Zoom etiquette for that? If I'm FaceTiming my brother or sister or my grandfather, what are the Zoom etiquette around that, or the social etiquette around that? Or if I'm talking to a friend over a game, what are the things that I need to remember around that? So really, and it's going to be different. You can't talk to your teacher the way you would talk to a dude you're playing a game with, right? Because that won't go well. So, or if you're talking to your grandfather, you're not going to use certain slang or certain terms. So
Right.
really outlining what those different strategies are, and making those visual, like the Zoom etiquette. That's great for school. Maybe you change that up and have a picture of, like, grandma or grandpa and this is when I'm talking to him. These are the things I need to do and say and talk, and topics I could talk about, so that it's very appropriate.
Yeah, and Stacey, I love that, and I appreciate it, because, you know, I think that goes back right to what we were saying earlier about, you know, when we're making connections in those different ways. If you're having those Zoom chats with family, you know, those are the time, right? Having those opportunities to practice those things, and like you said, Stacey, knowing the etiquette and the expectations around that, and that's really, again, how we can practice these skills and help our folks, and help those who love them and understand them too, right?
Right.
And helping
Absolutely.
them. Yeah.
So what are the takeaways? Social interaction shouldn't stop because we have to wear a mask or because we have to social distance. It's just going to look different. But like Teresa said, this is a great opportunity for our folks who really embrace oftentimes the virtual world, who help them be as successful as possible during this time. Using those real-time examples, whether it's movies or comedies or songs or being with family or whatever, have those examples shape how social exchanges should happen. The eyes can actually tell a lot more than the mouth, and teaching to look at people's eyes and pause and do some of that perspective taking. And you can do these games all the time, since we have to wear masks almost all the time. Virtual etiquette, can't say that enough. Yep. And then making it fun, because nobody wants to do any of this if it's boring, repetitive, just another thing. Teachers don't want to do it if it's just another thing. So we can make this fun for everybody, and really meaningful too, while we're teaching all the other academics and fun stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so now it's our question answer time.
You guys did a great job, a really wonderful session, and we have some questions that have come up. I think it was Gil who actually mentioned about attire, that in addition to having the Zoom etiquette rules, we might even have some Zoom attire rules to make sure that folks don't maybe not have pants on and then stand up and show everybody, or we all saw, or if you haven't seen it, you ought to search. There's a viral video of someone on a Zoom call who went to the bathroom, carried the video in with her. This is not a person on the spectrum. This is just one of us. So if you have a moment, it's worth it to search that, because the entire meeting went, "Oh, Jennifer," and then all at once she disappeared. Okay. There was another question. And this is probably an in-depth question that we probably have to have another lunch and learn about, but that was suggestions for creating online social groups for early learners.
Yes.
The ones that are using augmentative communication,
Yes.
or maybe are entering at a different level. So that actually sounds like a topic for a future lunch and learn. Because I think we could probably really dig in there and talk about how do we do this for early learners. There were a couple of Netflix shows that were called up, Stacy, especially when you were talking about relationships. Stacy and I were texting almost all night about Love on the Spectrum, a new Netflix show that has just been released. That is just fantastic. So if you have a Netflix subscription and you want to fall in love again, watch Love on the Spectrum. It is truly wonderful. It's also, if you have a spouse that struggles, not even on the spectrum, but there are good dating tips on there. And then someone else recommended Atypical.
Atypical is really good too.
Which is recommended by her ASB 19-year-old son. Oh, somebody found the video and posted it in the chat of the poor young woman who took her phone to the bathroom with her while she was in a class. Let's see. So Peggy says that she's co-led a virtual group, social communication groups with kids with her lead teachers.
Cool.
Fantastic.
And we end up doing all of the talking. And that, I think that's probably a challenge. I don't know if you guys have any suggestions about how to address if you're the teacher and you end up doing all of the talking, because maybe the kids don't know how to talk yet or how to really interact on Zoom.
I think really going back to those special interests.
Right.
And I think one of the things that I've seen work the best is having that expert time where the person's the expert and everyone else asks questions of them, and they begin to share that way. I think that's a good way of getting to know people. And then the next time you meet, you could do, oh, remember we all met, and hey, Carol, introduce Teresa. Remember what her interest was?
Exactly.
And then you can start doing things like that build on the skills that you taught initially.
Peggy noted that she loves the expert idea, that maybe assigning each kid to do a presentation on what they love. That would be a really good way to get them started talking and teaching everybody.
And they can use a visual, they can actually do a presentation, and then they have their own visual supports to help them make the conversation or the topic flow a little bit easier.
Excellent.
And
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and a few months ago, I heard somebody, a professor at UVA who has autism, who did a webinar. He mentioned that being the expert, ever since he was a little kid, has helped him feel a part of something and make a connection where he didn't know how to make a connection before. And so I think that's a really important piece of the expert is helping them, again, it helps with anxiety, but feeling them a part of something, because they may not know how to enter the social world when it's not their interest. So the interest helps open the door, and then, right, expanding that to something else. But just understanding, again, from their perspective, right, on what that really means to them.
And Peggy actually also then added, you could pre-video yourself.
Yeah.
And so if a student is really scared of being an expert and presenting live, they could video themselves. One of the things that people may not know about Zoom, if you have Zoom on your computer, even if you have a free account, you can record yourself in your own meeting. Nobody else is in the meeting with you. It's just you. You have a PowerPoint open. You have your little box up in the corner that you can actually record yourself, and then Zoom will save that for you. So, yeah, Rachel just said, what? Too fun. It's true, Rachel. You can record yourself in Zoom. Okay. Any other questions out there? I thought you guys had just a ton of very practical ideas.
Thanks.
And I think the good thing coming out of this is the idea of maybe really looking at those early learners who need that extra support to learn how to use their devices. So
yeah, absolutely. That would be wonderful. Yeah.
Well, everyone, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
As always, we love our Thursdays. Next week, we have Stacy Young. She is from Lancaster County, and she's going to be talking about when the puzzles start to fall apart, picking up the pieces during a pandemic. And she has a really interesting perspective on this. So please register for that. And we look forward to seeing everybody next time. And thank you for the suggestion for the early learners. We'll absolutely get on that.
Yeah.
And perhaps something around relationships too.
Yes. Thank
Everyone
you.
have a wonderful rest of your week and weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Great. Take care. Thanks.
bye, everyone.